Hey everybody, this is Joel. We're here in my hot pink bedroom with the big black polka dots, and it's time for the weekly update for the Dryden experiment. I need to forewarn everyone that my son is tearing around the house at about 900 miles an hour right now, and at some point he will come back and hang out with me. My wife has been having some health issues, and he'll need to come with me, so we'll get all the fun and frivolity that comes with the assistance of a 14-month-old. Here shortly, I want to start right off the top today by saying hello to Daniel B. Hunt. He does actually exist. He is on the conversation with us tonight, and we're glad to see him. He's, I think, probably the oldest still active member of the Dryden experiment, except maybe Laura Conrad and myself, of course. And this is the first time he's participated with us in a Google Hangout. We're very excited to see him. So, hi, Dan.
Hey.
Dan, before we get started, do you want to give us just sort of maybe 1 or 2 minute introduction to who you are and what it is that you do, how you relate to Dryden?
Well, Dan Hunt. I didn't know it was going to be an interview. Um, I got involved with Dryden about 2 years ago, about
Yeah.
when shortly after you started it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it was an online magazine mostly,
Mm-hmm.
and I wrote a bunch of short stories for that. And then I followed it down a rabbit hole and wrote this novel that's about to come out. So I
Awesome.
kind of disappeared for about a year and a half writing that thing.
Awesome. Well, welcome back, and we're glad to have you participating. And I'm going to ask you again about eclipsing Osiris C here in just a minute. So be forewarned. Now that we've got you cornered, we're going to hold on with both hands. So I thought what I would do is just do a real quick introduction just to the concept of the Dryden experiment right at the top. So if we've got new people who come into view, they can grab a hold real quick. The Dryden experiment is a Creative Commons concept. What we do is we start genres. We have a science fiction genre, we have a horror genre, we have a steampunk genre, we have a post-apocalypse genre. In theory, we have a romance genre, although we haven't done a whole lot of work in it yet. And what makes us unique is that those genres and everything that gets created in them is put in the Creative Commons BYSA 4.0 license. And that means that anything that you find in the Dryden experiment, you're free to use, and you don't have to tell us or share with us or get our permission or anything. But what you're obligated to do is put the materials that you create in the universe also under Creative Commons so that the next person who comes along can continue to use them. And so what we have is these growing universes in different genres of storytelling. We extend into art and film and everywhere else as well. And we all work together to support each other. And the whole point is that we get to have these really big, cool universes to play in, and we don't ever sell our rights to anybody. Tracy Vincent, Gavin Revin, and I run a very small publishing house called Dryden House that is a service for folks who are working in the Dryden universes, but you are under no obligation to work with us. You're free to work wherever you would like and publish however you would like using Dryden material. So that's the really fast. If you have more questions about that, feel free to follow up with Tracy or I or anybody else in the experiment. We'd be happy to share with you. What we're doing right now is we're having our weekly meeting. We do it once a week. We get together and chat. Tonight, as you know, we have Dan Hunt with us. We have Eugene Kelly III with us. We have Tracy Vincent with us. And we have myself. We may have a couple other folks drop in. We usually have 1 or 2 who show up a little bit late. And what I'm going to do, we try to keep these to an hour. I'm going to hike down the genre list sort of in a very random sort of fashion. And then afterwards, we'll talk a little bit about business things. And, of course, anybody who's participating in the conversation and has questions, feel free to interrupt or type a comment over in the chat, and we'll see if we can pick it up. I'm going to start tonight with sci-fi. Which is our biggest universe, Dryden Sci-Fi. And we've got a lot of things going on in Dryden Sci-Fi right now. Big Damn Dryden, which is the role-playing game that is it's actually going to be published through Dryden House, but it's being built by Owlman Press out of Ballarat, Australia, is somewhere between the second and third round of playtesting. I think they're doing third playtests in Ballarat this week, and actually a third playtest also in Manhattan, Kansas this week. We've got some exciting space-based combat rules that have come out this week, and a couple of other changes. And we're actually beginning to do edits, which is awesome. And we're getting some fantastic art from Gavin Revitt, who is our art director. He is currently busy building solar systems. So those of you who've been reading about the Il Solitaire or about LinCorp or some of the locations in some of Dan's books, those solar systems are now being built. We're going to have 8.5 by 11 full-page color images of solar systems spread throughout the role-playing game, and it's going to be pretty kick-ass to see. Dan Make and Dark Companion from Revenge are on the list, for example, to have an image in the role-playing game. There's a space station that's been added to that system. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's grown a little bit since Revenge. By the time we get to 2503, the year 25, a big space station there that will be in the map. But that's something that Dan created 2 years ago and is returning through Creative Commons now in the role-playing game. So very kick-ass. The next project I wanted to talk about is Rise of the Europan. There's a pivotal moment in the science fiction history that happens in the year 2600 when the Europan, which is the creature that lives on the bottom of the Sea of Europa, gets tired of the humans that have colonized the moon. Europa is a moon of Jupiter, and he throws the humans off, and it's very messy. And we've got 6 really fantastic authors working together on that project. Dan, Eugene, and Tracy, all 3 are a part of that project. We are nearing first draft. We have seen content from everyone. Dan sent this really fabulous story that I really enjoyed. Eugene is taking the part of the Europan, and Tracy is writing what will be the last story in the series. Tracy, I'm about to drop the ball. I think that we are going to go to print in the first week of November, last week of October.
Something like that. If depending on how first draft goes, but that sounds about right.
Right on. So we're expecting to see first draft from everybody by the end of this month, and that will allow us to make a decision about publication. Again, our never-ending source of art, Gavin Revitt, has proposed a really fantastic cover that I think everybody has seen at this point. Have you all seen that cover?
Yes.
And I think everybody loves it very much. The next story I wanted to talk about was Eclipsing of Cyrus C, which is the book that Dan referred to earlier. So why don't I just back off and let you have the floor again, Dan, and you can tell us what's going on with Eclipsing and when we can look forward to reading it, which I actually already have. Shh, don't tell. Go for it, Dan.
I just got the proofs back from the proofreader, and I went through those. It's amazing how many errors you find after 1,000 people have already read it. But they were still there.
Right.
So it bounced back to them, and they're going to make those changes. And then it bounces back to me, and I get to make one final sweep through the book for changes. And there's some small things like you wanted me to change some of the title instead of Dryden Experiment, Dryden Universe, things like that I'm going to change. And then there's a couple of small errors that I saw in there that the proofreader didn't state. So we're getting pretty close to that.
Very good. Do you have a sense of a release date?
It normally takes them a couple of weeks to send me something back after I give it to the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at 2 weeks before they send it back to me, and then probably a weekend if I have one free, and then before I send it back to them, and then 2 weeks after that probably. So.
Okay, so I'm going to guess by the time the
it makes about a month and a half.
Okay. Okay, so sometime between mid-September and the 1st of October?
Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that we cross-promote each other. We help each other get extra reach by, sharing for each other on Facebook and getting out and Twittering for each other. So absolutely, when you get close and you're ready to start talking about it, you've got links for us to post. Let us know. We're gonna get behind that story and support it. Having read that story is set in the primer of the Dryden Experiment sci-fi universe. It doesn't happen in company space, though. It happens off to it would be south on the map, out towards the edge of the galaxy. There's the consortium and is it the Federation, Dan? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The Federation and the Consortium, they're having a little bit of a nasty war out there. And for those of you who don't know Dan, he's many years of military service and then service as a security technician. He writes fantastic stories about soldiers and the lives of soldiers from a been there, done that kind of place. A little bit Joseph C. Halderman in that way. If you know who that is, a really enjoyable author who understands the lives of soldiers. And so Dan takes us with some soldiers on a very unusual mission with some very unexpected results. How's that for no spoilers? But it's a very enjoyable read. Any of you who have read Revenge or the story that he submitted for Rise of the European or Lucky Man know that Dan writes a really solid story and is an enjoyable read. So we very much look forward to Eclipsing. It's going to be a real addition to our universe, and I think in the long run will open up an entire sort of new section of the primer. The Consortium and the Federation are the only major players that we've looked at who are outside of that sort of main run of planets in the primer, and Dan has really given us a lot of flesh out there, a lot of bones out there to put flesh on in terms of developing further story. In a kind of a independent, smaller scale set of governments. So good stuff, and he's got characters hyped up on juice, which is the way to go. All right, then the last thing that I wanted to talk about in the science fiction universe is Alder's World. Alder's World is the book series. I'm still pretty convinced that it's a 3-part series that I am writing. Book 1 is available in print. I was having trouble with the e-version of that book, and I'm pleased to announce that I got it relaunched correctly on Smashwords this week. So Alder's World Part 1 is now available in print and e-version again, and in a correct e-version that's actually readable, which is very exciting. And Alder's World Part 2 is going very well. At midnight at night, this room is full of complete silence except for the tapping of the keyboard. And I do expect to release Alder's World in 2015, but I don't have a date yet. I asked Tracy, who's our marketing editor, how much I had to have done before she was ready to start promoting it. And she said, "Finish it."
Yeah, pretty much. Haven't finished.
So, being the wildly in control guy that I am, I said, "All right, okay, yeah, sure." And I believe that is what's going on in the sci-fi universe. Have I missed anything that anybody's working on?
Not that I know of.
We know that there are several other projects in the sci-fi universe that are out there. Greta Van der Rohe has brought part of her stories. I can't remember the name of that civilization.
And A Matter of Trust for the name.
And A Matter of Trust. Yeah, those both happen in the same civilization that's out there in Codex 2, 20,000 years in the future, and I've lost the name of it. I keep trying to call it Telacan, which is the name of the planet from Lucky Man, so that's not the right name. But they're both out there, and she continues to support those, but I don't know if she's bringing us any more. Kitty Sarkozy is working on a project, and Katrina, I'm sorry, I don't have hold of Katrina's last name. Katrina Taylor is working on a project. Both of those projects are sort of behind other things, either that they are writing or in their lives that have got them occupied. So we know that there's more going on in sci-fi, but we don't know when we're going to see it. I just wanted to touch very briefly on Dryden's steam. We have a steampunk genre that is divided into, at this point, 2 sort of time periods. We have an 1880s, 1870s setting in England and a 1910 setting in Baden-Baden, Germany. The English city is called Coleridge, and I'm going to talk at the end of this meeting about book anthologies that we're doing, and we will be starting a steampunk anthology in Coleridge, but that has not started yet. And the Baden-Baden setting is actually already got 7 books written. They were written in German, and we are translating them. But Anya Bogus, who is the author, is at Europe's and I think the world's largest live-action role-play festival in Germany this week.
She is LARPing.
She is LARPing, and she is not working with us. She does have a team put together now, though, that is doing the translation, and I think that by the time those stories come back to us, they will all be in English, which is very exciting because it means I won't be translating them. Not that I'm lazy or anything. So Dryden's team is still happening, so I wanted to mention it, but we are not active on it this week. Then I think actually the genre that is surprisingly moving very, very fast and developing very quickly is Dryden Nightmares. Eugene, who is with us, and Damien Roach approached Tracy and I and said, "Hey, we're ready to start the Nightmare," and we said, let's do it. Since we've started it, Damien wrote, or Eugene, I'm sorry, I've got those two names mashed together in my head. I owe an apology. Eugene wrote us this really fabulous introduction to a nightmare universe where multiple planes of existence are interrelated by the nightmares happening in them. And it's dark portals that pass between worlds, and in some worlds ghosts and demons are real, and in some they're legend, and sometimes you can pass between. It's wonderful, and Eugene's dark imagery is just, it's exciting. It's I've actually sort of stopped saying it's Lovecraftian because it's not. It's Eugene. It's different. The sort of early inclination is to go, I'm reading something that's Lovecraftian, and that's not right. Eugene does his own thing, but it's a dark and twisted universe that I think Lovecraft would be jealous of. So since then, we have gotten Take Care Death Walks here, which is a story by Damien that is a cowboy horror in the sort of twisted nightmare universe that Eugene wrote. It's off to a really interesting start. It's very exciting. Dance of a Million Colors came from Eugene and is sort of an introductory story to how you would write in the universe, and it's an exciting little fusion of science fiction and gothic horror. Really, really interesting. Eugene's brain, definitely you could write a lot of research papers on why it works like that. It's exciting stuff, and just today I got a second story that I've read the first about page and a half of. Sorry, Eugene, I will get it read tonight, called, correct me, Otengir.
Otoyanji.
Otoyanji, all right.
Otoyanji.
I haven't figured out what Otoyanji is doing, but when he rides into town, everybody gets quiet and watches him ride into town. Sort of like the demonic E.F. Hutton, I suppose. So Nightmare is off to a fantastic start. We're also going to talk about an anthology, and I'm going to talk about anthologies at the end, in the Nightmare, but the Nightmares are moving very quickly. And I want to just make a slight nod to Gavin Revitt. We were having a joke that we should call it Dryden Jamie in honor of Jamie Lee Curtis. And Gavin, who writes all of our logos, or who designs all of our logos, designed us the Dryden Jamie logo, and it was a very special moment. I cried a little. And, sorry, it just cracks.
Jamie, who's in Michael Myers, gets a
right.
Jason Voorhees mask.
we got a little bit confused on our genres, but it's just so funny. It's the whole world, the whole genre. Okay, Dryden is just a lot of fun. And then I'm going to stop talking again for a minute because we've arrived at Dryden APOC, and oh wow, are things happening in Dryden APOC? And I'm going to let Tracy have it. Tracy, tell us about Lorelei.
Well, Lorelei, we sent the ARCs out last Wednesday, and everyone received their ARCs, and we've already got a couple of reviews up on Goodreads, and they were exactly what I was expecting, and so I'm really, really happy with those. We're tweaking the titling a little bit to make it a little clearer, but otherwise it is going smashing. I've been getting a lot of personal messages from people who are in the process of reading it going, oh my God, I want her to be my best friend, talking about Lorelei herself. So it's actually really exciting to see. I can't wait until the 20th when we start getting all of the reviews posted up.
Right, right. So those of you who remember Sky Goddesses of Dryden volumes 1 through 4, the author behind the short stories, those were illustrated short stories, and the author behind them was Laura Conrad. And what has happened with this book, Lorelei, You'll Never Die, is that Tracy took a group of short stories by Laura and sort of helped Laura fuse them into a single narrative. It doesn't quite work as a conventional novel because we have stories that are there because they're a part of the apocalypse. The story is about the apocalypse, by the way. And then other parts that are sort of a continuous story about this character, Lorelei. And so you get this interesting hybrid. It's not quite a novel, but it's also not a short story collection. It's being really well received. Everything that I've read about it, the only concerns have been that, like Tracy said, we needed to fix the labeling a little bit. Some folks were getting a little bit lost who thought they were stepping into a conventional novel, and so we've helped retitle things so that folks can keep track of where they are and what they're reading. But Lorelei is a strong female character. She's self-possessed. She has her opinions about war and violence and sex, and she lives the apocalypse the way that she thinks it ought to be lived, and it's exciting, it's dynamic. I just had this sort of funny image of Kaylee from Serenity if she found herself facing the apocalypse. I don't know if that's really accurate, but Lorelei is an amazingly strong character, really handles herself very well in adversity, and of course if you've read Laura's writing, she writes this really light, fast prose that's just lends itself to an adventure story. We're really, really stoked about it. The official release date is on the 20th.
Yep. We do have pre-orders up everywhere except Amazon.
Why don't I do the thing where I gesture like this, and then I say I'll put the links below, and I'll put that whole set of Lorelei links below. You can get a pre-order everywhere except Amazon. And you go ahead and make your own derogatory statement about Amazon off of that, because my opinions are pretty well known. Okay, so the Lorelei links will be below. So then after we talk about genres, I'm going to quit talking about genres unless I've missed something. Have I missed anything?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Eugene, have I covered everything that you're working on?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that there's another story I'm probably going to be sending out to you in about a day or so as well, which is coming along pretty quickly.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it may be that the Nightmares anthology ends up being just you and Damien. We'll have to see. Okay. And I'm really sorry, Eugene, that I've got the two of you's names mashed into my head. I know which one I'm talking about. I just can't figure out which name goes with it. You wouldn't think it would be such a challenge, but my God.
Is that why you have me around?
That's right. So I can go, help me, Tracy, the name of the person who invented horror was... All right, that's not embarrassing. So typically, though, after we talk about genres, we stop and talk about sort of the business side of things a little bit and just how things are going in the business side of things. There hasn't been a lot of change in the business side of things. This week, we continue to aim towards Dragon Con, which Kitty Sarkozy is going to be throwing a party at. We plan to sort of saturate her with postcards and flyers and handy materials. There was some talk about doing a flash version of the role-playing game and having it available distribution. Nick has gotten into the new semester at university, though, and I think that may be the end of that idea. This damn real life keeps getting in the way of our Drydening, and suddenly Dryden needed to be a verb, and I didn't know how to handle it. But she is still on board to be at Dragon Con. She's going to have a suite, and we will be there in materials, and we're going to get as many authors and artists from Dragon Con as drunk as we can in order to help them understand how fabulous Dryden is. The other conversation that we've had that we're going to start moving forward to that people should start watching out for is that we want to do an anthology in each of the genres. the experience that we've had with this Rise of the Europan, this bringing together of a group of authors to work together, has just been really fantastic. It's been a great way to get folks familiar with the universe. It's been a great way for people to sort of practice their writing and develop as authors. The sharing of stories and the conversations that have gone on. We've been meeting Wednesday nights and just watching people who have never met, from, well, in this case, just across the country. I don't think we have any internationals except when Dan was participating from Kazakhstan, somewhere with a stan in its name. But anyway, watching these guys who come from completely different walks of life with completely different writing styles, hooking up together. At one point, someone, I think it was Kitty, was saying she kind of wanted one of her characters to survive, but it didn't seem very possible. And Damien said, "Oh, well, just give me a physical description, and for the evacuation scene, I'll write them in." And so, in spite of the fact that everybody's writing their own stories, these interweavings and interlinkings have started happening, and this teamwork it's just really exciting. I just love that kind of stuff. All right, enough about that. And so we feel like we would like to go ahead and do that with the other universes. And Tracy, I'm going to invite you to correct me, but I think that our order is next we will launch. Oh boy, I'm gonna blow it right off. We're gonna launch Steam in September. We're gonna send out a call. We're gonna get.
We're sending out a call as soon as possible on it, pretty much, and just to get people thinking about it and interested in it. But we're not going to start pulling people together probably until about September, I guess.
Well, and we want a little bit more information from Mikey Vessa. A lot of Coalbridge lives only in her head, and we want enough of a structure to sort of give authors something to cling on to. In the Rise of the Europan story, we had a specific event we wanted to draw, and there are a couple of short stories that exist in Coalbridge. I wrote them, and Mikey clearly has a larger vision of the city that we haven't been able to get at yet. She's been having some health issues as well. It's been kind of a bad month for that. And so we're kind of waiting to get that ball rolling until we can get enough of a definition of Coalbridge, enough of a vision of Coalbridge to start sharing it with other authors. But then what we plan to do is sort of go one a month, launch one a month. After that, the next one will be Nightmare.
Yep.
Nightmare, which we're already getting a whole lot of content for because Damien and Eugene seem to have made it their life goal, which I heartily encourage and think that you should all quit your day jobs and just do nothing but Dryden. Maybe not literally right at first, but we'll get there. And so that's very exciting. We haven't had a conversation yet about Nightmare, but before the start of October, Eugene, expect Tracy and I to come to you and Damien, I made it, and have a conversation about how to structure the Nightmare. We certainly want to start with your introduction, and I think it will be exciting to have kind of this sample that Damien has done with one take on how to get a genre. He's telling this gothic cowboy horror story, very cool, and then the stories that you're working on, which are very different, and introducing the idea that these are related through that dark introduction that you wrote, I think will bring a lot of other authors in. I think they'll have a lot of fun with that. And then we know that we're going to do one for APOC, but we haven't had any conversation about it at all, really, because we're just hyped up over Lorelei right now, and she's got APOC completely soaked up. But come November, we'll be here talking about what Apocalypse is going to look like, and then I don't know what to do beyond that. We may open another genre. We may come back with another sort of specific story out of the sci-fi universe that we want to do a compilation out of. We may have enough authors at that point who are producing content just independently that we don't really have time for compilations. They're sort of intensive in terms of number of authors to work with. But we have committed to a total of 4 compilations launched by the end of the year. They'll all be for 2016 publication dates. So you might be thinking about, if you've wanted to get into Dryden Steam, or you're wondering just what it is that's going on in Eugene's head and you'd like to read some more about the nightmare, let us know, because those are coming up. And that's all of the business items that I brought. Can you believe it? At 900 words a minute, you can say practically anything in half an hour. Let's just open it up. Anybody else want to talk about topics? Have things that you want to focus on? Where is everybody? How is everybody?
You need to add links to all of the groups too.
Okay.
Dryden Steam, Dryden Nightmare, Dryden APOC. That way people listening can actually go to those pages.
You think that would help?
And I think it might. It can't hurt. Especially Nightmare, since we have the introduction on it.
Oh, yeah, the introduction's already posted.
Yeah, you didn't want to start the group till you had an introduction and a cover.
I've got a question. What is Dryden Rose and Dryden Scarlet?
Dryden Rose and Dryden Scarlet are the romance imprints for Dryden House.
Okay. Okay, I just saw that come up and I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, that's what that is.
We have this idea that we would like to, as we encounter romance and erotica authors, no matter what other genre they're in, if they're writing sci-fi or writing horror, that we have a way to sort of group them together. And so we have a specific logo that's Dryden Rose and Scarlet. We have 2 actually, Rose and Scarlet, and we have a Facebook page that's up and ready for those. So far, the only author that's really taken that us up on that is Greta van der Roel.
And she's self-published.
But she's self-published. But we would consider both of those Dryden Rose stories, I think, wouldn't we? I don't think that they were naughty enough to be Scarlet.
They could be either or, because Fade to Black is Rose, and hers is not quite Fade to Black. Hers is a little more than that, but not that much.
Okay. Sort of the rule of thumb is if you use the word moist more than twice, then you've moved on up to Dryden Scarlet. You're no longer Dryden Rose.
I think that worked.
But that's a way for us. Tracy really enjoys romance and erotica, and we want to make it open for romance and erotica, but it crashes other genres. You can write romance and cowboys, you can write romance and space, blah, blah, blah. So we set up Rose and Scarlet to be available for those. We haven't done a lot of development in it yet. Certainly, if that's something you're interested in, message Tracy and say, by the way. All right, and the other thing that while we're talking about business stuff is I purchased the website again. We now have a website. It's just drydenexperiment.com instead of the Dryden Experiment, which it was before. And at this point, it is almost completely content-free. But those of you who remember the old website and the old attempt at a wiki, all of that material still lives on my desktop and will begin finding its way back out in a new and improved form onto our new website. Damian Roach is helping us do that. We're using a WordPress plugin this time. The problem we had last time with the wiki is that an unprotected wiki is almost infinitely hackable, and we were doing a lot of supporting of the Russian porn industry, which wasn't really the goal. We don't have anything against Russian porn. Heck, we might even publish some if it got submitted under Dryden Scarlet. That was a joke. But we had a real hard time controlling the wiki last time. I was spending more time cleaning it than I was adding content. This time what we've done is we've done a WordPress install, and then we've got the wiki widget running, or it's not called widget, the wiki app or whatever it's called running, and that way only people that we approve can post content. So if we start showing up with Russian porn, it's me, Damien, or Tracy, and I'll tell you right now who my suspect is. But look for that. I didn't say it was you. Guilty conscience.
Yeah, but you were talking about if we had Russian porn, it'd be me that do it.
it is not an important part of the Dryden universe at the moment, but we hope that quickly we'll be moving back into the web business, especially so that people who are new and trying to learn about the universes can really quickly get access to information and do research and figure out how to place their stories in our universes. And I want to throw a big thank you out to Damien for getting behind that project for us, because it had me stymied. And Dan, I noticed a moment ago you started to say something, the conversation rolled on. I want to come back and bring the conversation back to you.
I was just going to say that the short story collection that I was writing, which the last story turned into the novel, but the replacement story is going to be set in the first resource war. I've got about two-thirds of it written.
Wonderful.
I did this pretty horrific scene of child abuse, strangely enough, and so I skipped the next two parts and I wrote the ending. So now I've just got to write the middle and fill it back in. So
okay.
I've got the next week and a half off, so I should make some progress on that story. So hopefully that'll come out before Christmas too.
Fabulous, fabulous. So the first resource war, we're now back in Dryden sci-fi. Before the advent of faster than light travel, there was a very dark period in human history where the amount of resources, this may seem an awful lot like the stuff that you read about in the news, the available resources on Earth were less than the needs of the population, and a series of really devastating wars broke out. Dan's story will represent the first story from the resource wars, so that's exciting, and we look forward to exploring that. And Dan, I have to tell you, I really enjoyed this story that you wrote for Rise of the Europan. That was just a lot of fun. I don't want to give stuff away. I think both Eugene and Tracy have probably read it at this point, but for viewers at home, Dan picked an unusual angle and an unusual writing style, and really kind of stretched the Rise of the Europan stories out with that short story. And I think I'll say, without spoiling things, that Dan, looking at the story of the rise of an alien creature on the moon of Europa in the year 2600, decided that a little bit of noir was called for. Strong decision, worked very well. We wanted to use the Rise of Europan to show the diversity of Dryden authors, and just like the little boxes here on my screen are Dan and then Eugene, the style is noir and then dark gods, and that's just a lot of fun. That's going to be a great book. I think that everybody that reads it will be really happy they did. It's exciting. All right, so I want to go one more chance and let anybody who has comments or questions to come back in, and then I think that after this meeting ends, Dan and Tracy, we have been waiting, at least I have been waiting for 2 years to get a chance to chat with Dan, and I'm really excited about that. So Eugene, if you'd like to get to know Dan, you should feel free to stay and join us. But unless we have other questions, I'm going to go ahead and let this meeting go and tell everybody what a great week we had. Last comments?
I've got one question.
Go for it.
Upcoming horror anthology, I'm gonna go on DeviantArt to try to find. There are a few artists that I wouldn't mind maybe commissioning to do a work or two, or maybe buying a piece of art from them to be used.
Let's talk about that, Eugene. I'm really happy to work with people on DeviantArt, and I really think that Dryden Nightmares is going to draw in people from DeviantArt, and I'm excited about it. The question of who buys the art and who pays for it and when, and then how do the decisions get made when Gavin starts to do the book layout, are just things that we need to talk through. And we've got plenty of time. We're not even gonna do the call for it for 6 or 8 weeks yet. But I'd love to have that conversation with you, and we can absolutely do it. We can absolutely go get an artist out there. We just need to make sure we know who's buying what and when we do it.
Okay.
Right on.
All right.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kill this call because I'm being summoned, but I'll be right back in just a minute. I'm not sure. I don't know why I'm being summoned, but I'll be right back. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. It's been another fantastic week at Dryden, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.